We've all been to the State Fair, right? Some of us go annually, and we know of the gospel booths at the State Fair. Do you remember the one with the $1 million bill, the eye test? I volunteered at that for about 5 years, and there were all kinds of opportunities to talk to people. Some interesting, some not so interesting. I thought I would share a few of those with you. One year I was at the fair, and I saw a lady come directly at me, walking very fast, pointing her finger at me. And she got right in my face, and she said, "I just want to know one thing. Do nuns sin?" And I said, "Well, of course, Romans 3:23, all, including nuns, have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." And she threw her hands up in the air and she walked away saying, "Well, I don't believe that." So, I'm sure that we could find many self-righteous nuns, but I think you'd really be hard-pressed to find one that would say that they actually don't sin. I think that's in our nature. We all know that. 1 John, if we say that we do not sin, we make him out to be a liar and he has no place in our lives. There was another time where a young mother with a baby stroller walked up to the booth, and a couple of us were gathered around her talking to her, and she confidently expressed that she believed in reincarnation and that it was her goal to come back as a cat. And so Eddie, who was never at a loss for words, was standing with us there, and he just real quickly, he pointed to her little 8-month-old and he says, "Ma'am, your child needs a mom, not a cat." Another time, a man was walking by and he just, I tried to hand him a tract and he just waved me off and he said, "I don't do Jesus." There was also another man. He was from Australia. It was pretty obvious with his accents, but he also told me that he was. And as we were talking, I shared the gospel with him, and at the end, I handed in some tracts. And he was pretty quiet. He didn't say very much. And I asked him, I said, "Well, James, what are you going to do with this information?" And he looked at it, and he said, "Well, I'm going to give this to my child." And I said, "James, no. You must become a child of God." One final story. This is one that has stuck with me for a long time. Young man, probably 18, 19 years old, walked up to the booth. And as I started to share the gospel with him, I just remember him focusing. He was very focused on what I was saying. In fact, the table in front of me, he had his elbow on the table and he had his hand on his chin, and he was just watching me as I was talking. So I thought, well, this is going pretty well. And shortly into the conversation, his friend came up very loudly behind him and got in my face, and he said, "I just want you to know, this is my boyfriend, and we're having sex." He said it a lot more crudely than that, but I have to clean it up a little bit. So the young man was shocked, and I asked him, I said, "Well, is this true?" And he didn't deny it, but he was very embarrassed, and he turned to his friend, and he said, "Why are you saying that?" So I continued sharing the gospel with him. We talked for about another 5 or 7 minutes, and the whole time his friend mocked us. He just stood behind him just mocking us and trying to talk over us. Well, in the end, I just gave my young friend some tracts and a small New Testament and told him that I would pray for him as he walked away. And I've always thought about this passage in Acts 17:32 when Paul was talking to the people of Athens, and it reads, "When they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, 'We will hear you again about this.'" So I'll just leave you with this. 1 Corinthians 3:6, Paul said, "I planted, Apollos watered, but God gives the growth." So there are times when we plant and other people's come along and water. And so I'm just hoping for that young man, I planted, and one day someone will come around and water.